Hey, Texas Values friends. Jonathan Sines here, president of Texas Values, continuing our podcast series here at SoConCon, the Social Conservative Conference put on by Family Policy Alliance. Family Policy Alliance is the national organization that Texas Values is associated with as the Family Policy Council for the state of Texas. And there's a lot of national groups here, including Alliance Defending Freedom, where my good friend Matt Sharp works. Matt is now I forgot what your title was. Senior Counsel. Thank you. Such an easy one. Come on. Senior Counsel, Matt Sharp for Alliance Defending Freedom. They're doing a lot of great work, working with some of their folks, even at the state legislature level, not just in the court systems. But, Matt, welcome back, because you've been on the Texas Values Report before, just not in Indiana.
That's right. Always good to be with you.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see I'm not the only one making the rounds all over the country, but still keeping a good smile.
Exactly, you got to. Lots to smile about.
No, there are some good things to smile about. And I enjoyed meeting your family, sincerely, last week.
We did. Yeah, we had the ADF Summit. You were out there. A lot of our friends at the state policy councils, and did get a little downtime with the family as well.
Yes. And this isn't a dig at FPA. It's just a recommendation. The ADF conference had swimming pools and all kinds of stuff.
Water slides. That's what my kids enjoyed.
Yeah. Kids to this one. I didn't bring them to the last one. The timing and logistics didn't work out for our situation. So I was like, well, I'll bring them to the FPA one. Usually it leans a little bit more to where people bring families. And we got here, there's no pool, and my daughter's like looking at me. I'm like, okay, we'll figure something out. Anyway, I went down the water slide, though, last week. I had a great time. Yeah. But, more serious things to talk about. Tell us about Alliance Defending Freedom. You guys been making a name for yourself for many years, but in case some people aren't aware of the group, tell our viewers a little bit about what you guys do.
Yeah. Well, Alliance Defending Freedom, we're a legal organization that exists to defend the right to speak and live the truth. And we do it primarily through litigation. We've got cases at the Supreme Court. We've actually got 4 cases at the Supreme Court coming up in this next term. We've had 16-plus victories.
Which ones are those, by the way? Do you remember the 4?
Yeah, so we've got the Kaylee Childs. This is on behalf of a Colorado counselor that is being censored for wanting to help kids dealing with issues about gender, about sexual identity. We are involved in the women's sports cases out of Idaho and West Virginia, defending those laws to protect fairness in women's sports. We're defending a pregnancy center in New Jersey who's being attacked simply for wanting to help women get abortion pill reversal. And then there's a 4th one that I'm blanking on.
That's okay. Right now, but the reason I asked, and I'm being a little selfish here, I interrupted you describing your group because, I've been licensed in November, it'll be 22 years in November. And, early on in my career, I was a lawyer in a lot of those cases. Sometimes I'll be a part of our amicus briefs, but my role as being more of a litigator changed several years ago, but I've continued to stay licensed. I've worked on a few cases, but early on I was like, I'm going to get that Supreme Court bar application and all that kind of stuff in. So the past few years I'm like, okay, I keep forgetting. I really have to be intentional when one of our cases, if you will, on one of our issues goes up, and I missed an opportunity this year. There was a Texas case.
Great case.
And a victory. And so maybe you can help remind me of that. But I'm going to get that paperwork started soon because I would love to be in the courtroom when one of the cases on an issue we work on comes through, maybe for the oral argument. Maybe I can convince Kelly Shackford to come up there and speak well of me. We'll see how that goes. So Alliance Defending Freedom, though, involved in a lot of big cases. Yep. And as we know, this year, and maybe, previous years too, but leaning a little bit more into the state legislative process.
That's right. We've really been wanting to partner and work more closely with state allies like Texas Values, other state policy councils across the country to really be a force multiplier. We see time and time again how well-funded the opposition is, and so we've really felt called by God to invest more resources, to stand arm in arm with you guys at state capitals, to bring our clients in to share these stories and our legal expertise, and by God's grace, we're seeing some incredible things that God's doing through all of our alliance.
No, it's been, and a lot of times, you're there anyway, so maybe it makes it easier. You don't have to travel to every single state. Right. We're like, Matt, come over. But y'all added a former intern of mine of Texas Values and an amazing Texan. Chelsea Yeoman's now on the ADF team.
We did actually just started this week, so she's bringing some brilliant expertise in the life realm and other issues, but just excited to see so many opportunities that God's opening up. And again, we view it as it's the alliance growing and thriving, and God going to do incredible things through it.
Yeah, and Chelsea is fantastic. I'm a big fan of hers, and there was a couple of times during the session when she was there this year that we got to a couple of crisis points, a couple of stopping points, particularly on a life bill. As a matter of fact, that one has come back during the special session in Texas that started on Monday. I don't know if the language is going to be exactly the same, but probably pretty close on the chemical abortion pill issue. And, and I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning this, but I really appreciate it. She came and she said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I know you've been through a lot of sessions. I'd love your guidance and suggestion on what to do next, right? It's not like I had, some incredible answer. I gave her some suggestions, but I appreciated that we had established this friendship. She interned for me, but I've seen her work since then. She worked for First Liberty for a while. But nonetheless, that connection that she was like, hey, I'm going to reach out to a friend of mine, an allied partner, however you want to phrase it. And I was right there in the same boat with her, but there was a little bit more on her plate to do that. And so I said, hey, if I was in your shoes, this is what I would do. Here's my suggestions. And the more that we have that around the Capitol, because I'm going to tell you, when I first started there, it was me and I don't know, maybe one or two other people, and I didn't know if I could trust those people either. So I'm excited for her. Speaking of the special session, though, we're in the middle of that right now. I mentioned the chemical abortion pill, the Texas Women's Privacy Act. Got to work with your team during the session on that bill. But this is not just a bill we want to get passed during the session. The special session, Governor Abbott has said, I want these bills to pass. That's going to be a huge factor for us.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to see that courage. We need that leadership coming from governors saying, this is a priority. This is what I want to stake my legacy on, is bringing an end to chemical abortion, ensuring that every girl's privacy is protected across the state of Texas. But it also shows that leadership. We need more governors to be standing up and doing this like Texas Governor Abbott's doing there. So I view this as a wave that's continuing to go across the country, and having Texas in particular, which is viewed by many as a conservative stalwart.
Bellwether state.
That's right,
you want to call it, as Texas goes, so goes the nation, we like to say sometimes.
That's right.
But I think a big part of that, though, Matt, Alliance Defending Freedom, still a lot of focus on what happens in the courts, and particularly U.S. Supreme Court. The victories that are starting to add up and stack up, those give legislators so much confidence. One of those cases came out of Texas.
That's right.
The age verification issue. And others that they see policy issues we're working on. Tell us about some of the big victories that ADF has had at the U.S. Supreme Court more recently.
Yeah, well, one of the big ones we had this year was in a case out of South Carolina. This was the Medina case. Several years ago, South Carolina had been one of many states in response to those horrific videos that came out about Planned Parenthood selling baby body parts to say we are not going to give a single penny of Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. Yeah. Well, Planned Parenthood challenged it, saying, no, you can't do that. And this case bubbled up to the Supreme Court, and the court upheld the actions of South Carolina and said, Planned Parenthood, you don't even have standing to challenge the removal of funding. So this is going to be a great step, because we are hearing appetite from lawmakers across the country to say, not only do we want to make sure that they're not getting money for abortions, but Planned Parenthood is now one of the biggest providers of these dangerous transition drugs and surgeries. So we want to defund them from that. We want to take them off any federal funding or state funding from this, and make sure that we're protecting life, we're protecting women, we're protecting kids.
Well, and these victories matter also because you hear this, I hear this. We work on legislation, we draft things, we try to get them moving, and there's always someone, often, and sometimes on our side, so to speak, that says, oh, but what about the Supreme Court? Oh, but this issue's not been up there before. Or what if it ends up being unconstitutional? And a lot of times I think those are fake reasons, and they're just trying to hide that they're a little squeamish about it. But nonetheless, it does come up in conversation, or it comes up in a committee hearing. So the more that we keep demonstrating these victories, and, hey, I talked with Alliance Defending Freedom, their lawyers. Remember, they're the lawyers that went up to the Supreme Court. So all those things, I think, connect together and give us strength. I mean, so there's another case, too, that I think you wanted to mention on a victory that you guys had. You had the Medina. What was the other one?
The Scarametti case.
Yes. Big case. That's on related to legislation that Texas passed on protecting kids from these gender transition surgeries.
Yeah, very exciting. We've now got 27 states that have passed these laws, making sure that kids aren't being harmed by these puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, sterilizing surgeries. And to your point, when these laws were first passing, a lot of people were saying, oh, they're unconstitutional, they're going to get struck down. Number one, it was the right thing to do
That's
to
right.
protect kids. But number two, the legal arguments were there. States have always had authority to protect kids. This was following that line of cases, so it was a great victory to see these 27 state laws upheld and open the door for more efforts to protect kids from gender ideology.
No, it's going to be great moving forward, and we're already past that halfway point, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll just create more momentum. You've spoken at this event before, but our annual Texas Policy event, we're now calling Texas Faith Fest. At the last weekend of September 26th and 27th of September, Chloe Cole is already confirmed to be a speaker. I know this issue is big for her, the Scarametti case and that state law issue. Got some other great speakers. Go to our website. You can get signed up and find out. We're going to be adding more speakers, too, just so you know. But I think this demonstrates a shift that's started several years ago, maybe with the Dobbs v. Jackson case overturning the Roe versus Wade abortion decision. But this Supreme Court giving more deference to the states. Hey, is this what the state wants to do? We're not going to be the final word. That's a good sign for a lot of the work we do.
It really is, and that's why passing these state laws matters.
Yeah.
If you've got a case going up to the Supreme Court and only one or two states have passed it, it's a very different factor than if the Supreme Court's looking at over half the country passing laws to protect women's sports, to protect kids from gender transition, to protect girls' privacy. I think we're at 19 states now. So all of those state victories matter. But ultimately, like you said, we are glad to see the Supreme Court recognizing states' authority in this area, and that it's not the role of the Supreme Court to override these good decisions by state legislatures to protect their citizens.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. There was one bill that didn't get a lot of attention. I think you guys were supportive, and y'all were probably one of the central groups working on it, but it's a little bit more on the quiet side, which is fine with me. You know, a lot of times that's great. You can get a bill passed. But the early release bill in Texas on the religious time to release for, you know, wherever the students want to go after that wasn't really talked about a lot. We dropped a card, which means we submitted a witness card in support of it, or one way or another. And I had people approach me, and I was, you know, hey, we need that last little nudge or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, there's, you know, maybe this needs a push.
Yeah.
But other than that, didn't really get a lot of attention, but it ended up getting done.
Yeah, those are great bills. Another one that's kind of creeping across the nation. It's just this recognition that parents, when they drop their kids off at public school, still ought to be able to have religious education as part of it. So for these kids to be dismissed for an hour during the week to go get some great religious instruction, it's not only important to protect parental rights, but ultimately we're filling a hole. As we've been trying to get all this gender ideology out of schools, we can't just leave a vacuum. We've got to fill it. And that's what these laws do, is they're filling it with the decisions of parents that they want religion part of their child's education.
Yeah, and I know this wasn't really an issue that y'all got involved in, not that I could tell, but Texas passed a major school choice bill. Governor signed it, and it again, I think, shifts the momentum, the culture, and all the dynamics to where there's more pressure on public schools because of some of these things they've been doing on the LGBT issues, being hostile to religious beliefs and religious practice. We even passed a bill that's, you know, named after Coach Joe Kennedy, right? You know, those different things where, and some of that was a change in the legal standard on the religious freedom issues. The Lemon test that we know from the 70s, that standard got removed or overturned. And so you continue to see this evidence of things that maybe were more difficult before, getting a lot more momentum. But I think you mentioned this earlier, state legislators being a lot more bold, which, you know, coming to me for ideas and saying, hey, what do you think about this? I'm like, great, because I think I might have had to push on you a couple of years ago. I'm glad you're initiating it. But you guys do a lot to train your lawyers and to interact with some of those elected officials to give them some backup. I've got to imagine that's helping too.
Absolutely.
As your relationships have deepened over time.
Yeah, when it's part of why we are an alliance and why that's so critical to what we are. We want to partner with state allies. We want to partner with lawmakers. We want to partner with people in big law that are advising these school boards, because we know if they get good advice from their lawyer, they're going to be passing good policies that make sure we're not indoctrinating kids with gender ideology, but respecting parents' rights, respecting student-free speech. So all of that is important. It's why that cultivating those relationships, pouring into others, and ultimately being part of that alliance mindset is really what helps shape the law and move it where we need to go.
Yeah. Well, and look, you've got great, courageous athletes. I mean, I think y'all probably filed one of the first Save Women's Sports, so to speak, lawsuits. Was it Connecticut?
Connecticut, that's
what
right.
Was the athlete's name?
Yeah, so it's Selena Soul and Chelsea Mitchell that were two great high school athletes, losing out to two males that were coming in and dominating track and field throughout Connecticut and New England.
I think the U.S. Olympic Committee announced this week they're adopting a policy, only women and women's sports. I mean, we're back to basics and common sense here, but it matters what those laws say. We need to get these issues right, and we're going to have to put them in law. Otherwise, the other side's going to kind of capitalize on people. Well, we're not really sure what to do. The Trump administration has had a lot to do with, giving us that support. The DOJ's not on our back. They're on our side on all these issues, which makes a big difference. All right, I just wanted to say something real quick. Side note, I did put in a request to have Kristen speak at our event. Not that I don't think you're a great speaker. You spoke before, but we're kind of going up the food chain a little bit.
Understandable.
But part of that is to give her an opportunity to have a platform in Texas. And I know you guys have different events and so on, but even at our event, for our people to be able to see, and I know y'all got a lot of different lawyers, but her leadership's been a big part of the direction y'all are going.
Oh, she absolutely has leaned in on being at the forefront of these big cultural issues. I remember when we were discussing, should we get involved in the women's sports issue, Kristen was one of those voices saying, this is the right thing to do. We're ultimately standing for truth. And that was the whole theme of our event, contending for truth. And when you stand on the side of truth on all of these issues, you're ultimately standing on the right side of history on all of these things. So I've so appreciated her passion on these issues and her saying, if it's true, if it's right, then we're going to lean into that and we're going to put our neck out there and stand for what's right.
Yeah, and, look, I mean, I think there are more lawyers that like to do our work and will be that used to, and that's a good thing. Y'all have had a lot to do with that. But there are times, certainly, 5-10 years before where we are now, where lawyers, they would either, not take cases like this, they wouldn't volunteer, they wouldn't get involved, or they might. I mean, you had Paul Clement, the former Solicitor General of the United States, get fired from his big-time law firm because he wanted to stand for marriage.
That's right.
I mean, so even a guy like him who was one of the best, and so, but I think that's shifted as well.
Absolutely.
And some of that is, I mean, we like to win as lawyers. So when you see a lot of wins, you're like, hey, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But you guys are cultivating that culture and that opportunity. Let me ask you this. Y'all have an office in D.C., am I right? And I know you're not a C4 or political organization, whatever, but do you feel like there's been some recognition from the Trump administration, the president's administration, that, that they've got your back at times?
Oh, absolutely. It has been a sea change from what we saw in the Biden administration. You bring up the women's sports issue. We went from there where the administration was on the other side of our Connecticut case. They were on the other side of these lawsuits defending state laws protecting women's sports.
Yeah.
Now it's the government on our side, and they're going after California. They're going after Minnesota and these states that have bad policies.
Right. They really came – I mean, they called out the woman in Maine. Was it in Maine?
That's right.
And then now, our friend Sophia Lori's working on this case. I guess the California I don't know, whatever the sport. Yeah, he came down on that. Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah, but I go back to it's incredible to see the Trump administration lean into this, but I don't think we would be where we are, and I don't think the Trump administration would be as strong as it is, but for the states stepping up and leading on this issue. Everything that's happened since 2020, of the 27 states passing all of these laws, I think has emboldened the administration and really laid the groundwork for the administration to come in and say, all right, we're going to build upon what Texas and the other 26 states have done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a couple years ago, I had Riley Gaines sitting next to me at a CPAC event. People knew who she was. A little bit. But now, the president's inviting her up to speak at his events and the conferences and the RNC and all that. And I'm like, remember me when we that's right. No, we're so Riley's doing a great job, and we're so proud of her because there are very few young ladies at her age that will lead, but will also get the traction.
Yeah, she's
the complete package. I mean, and the way all those things came together, a lot of it was the timing. There were people that broke that ground, Selena and other before her, but she has not wasted a moment, and it's been inspiring. Well, listen, we got work to do and other stuff. But we got to sit down every now and then and catch up on some things and share that there are still people out there. They've never heard of you. They've never heard of me. They never heard of ADF or Texas Values. You're like, how? How could you not? We're always doing this and that. But that's just the way it is. So great opportunity for our viewers, our listeners. Tell people the website if they want to learn more about ADF.
Yeah, they can visit us at adflegal.org. That's adflegal.org. Learn about our cases, our work, and ultimately what they can do to join us in standing for freedom.
Yeah, and the work they do, like ours, free of charge. They're a nonprofit organization. And, never know when you're going to need them, but they got your back.
That's right.
Matt Sharp, who is the Senior Counsel, almost forgot to get for Alliance Defending Freedom, has been our guest today on this special segment of the Texas Values Report. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you, man.